have this conversation, I am actually joined by Miss Rita Atkwasa. She's the Executive Director of the Institute for Social Transformation. Good morning, Rita.
Good morning, Rita.
You're most welcome. And I'm also joined by Mr. Chitamirike Emma. You're most welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Now, good morning. He's the Executive Director of the Public Policy Institute. And before we can get into this conversation, I think you need to take a listen and a watch to this.
The CPI is one of the key references investors make before entering a country. It's a key reference donors use when they are entering a country. So it is important, it's quite important to have a very good ranking, it's quite important to have a very high score. Because in that case, you'll attract investors, you'll attract donors, even other people will feel comfortable doing business with you. If you're ranked poorly in the corruption index, definitely people will hesitate working with you, or they'll be working with you very cautious. Transparency International does not generate the scores per se, but we use information from other sources to come up with our scores. The previous year, we ranked 151st. This year, we're ranked 149, and that's an improvement of about 3 places. However, the score remains the same. We scored 26 out of 100, that's 26% previously, and even this time, 26%. One of the reasons why the rank might have changed and the score remains the same, you might find that there are some other people performed worse than us. The few steps and measures we have taken in the fight against corruption were noticed by those who carry out the various surveys, and they ranked us better.
So the good news there is that as Uganda, we've improved in regards to corruption, but the score still remains at 26. Now, the conversation is based on the report that was actually released by Transparency International Uganda, and as it stands, we score 26%. As Ugandans, should we smile? Should we worry? What happens next for us? That's our conversation this morning. So, Miss Rita, Mr. Chitamirike, as we start this conversation off, your thoughts about corruption in our country is where we're going to start it from.
I think corruption is not good for any country, not good for any society, neither is it good for an individual. To start with, it cripples your inability to make a decision in the first place. It hampers your voice and power and curtails everything you'd be able to do for yourself, especially when we talk about transforming societies and individuals, because transformation begins with an individual. It begins with you and me. So when corruption comes in, it takes away the key principles that transformation looks at: your voice and power. What is it you've got to decide? The issue about participation and your ability to organize others to be able to come together and achieve that transformation. So for us, ranking 26 and having not improved in any score is absolutely not good for us as Ugandans.
Okay, and you, Mr. Chitamirike?
Thank you so much. I think the first campaign I want to undertake with Transparency International is to not call what's happening corruption. It's actually theft of public resources. And I think we should be changing it from corruption index to theft of public resources index. Because every time we use corruption, we sugarcoat what actually happens. What's happening is that certain individuals are stealing resources, public resources. And because if we are able to change the name from corruption to theft, then we shall give it the due attention it deserves. Because at the moment, majority of Ugandans may not fully appreciate what corruption is. When we talk about theft, you and I will be able to understand that actually people are stealing public resources. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I don't want to agree with Transparency International that we are doing better or we have improved 3 places from last year. We haven't. What actually has happened is that the situation in other countries has worsened. And because the situation has worsened in other countries, we found ourselves moving places that ideally we shouldn't, because we haven't done anything significant between last year and this year. Probably we have even worsened than we were last time.
But if the score is still the same, 26%, 2018, 26% again, isn't there something right that probably we're doing? Like our score is, stagnant, so to speak. It's not going lower, but the score has maintained its place.
I looked at the three reasons that are given to determine whether your score will improve or reduce or, significantly make a change. And one was the word robust rule of law. Number two was the oversight of institutions. And number three was how communities or society builds consensus in terms of a value system around corruption. And when you look at what has been happening, I don't think we have made any step further in terms of what happened last year. So for me, we are still at the same pace. Yes, the president comes out to say this time he'll be able to bite, he'll be able to punish, but you don't see anything coming through. And in the first place, the fundamental thing is when you take this money or you steal, what happens? If you are prosecuted and it is true you did take this money, do you bring it back? That is one of the major hindrances. Yes, they can punish you for 20 years, but what the public will have lost if it is not brought back to the hands of the public good, then, and I think for me there is really a deadlock. Unless that is solved in terms of the laws that we have. Like for sure, if you found like it happened with Kazinda and the rest, let them bring back the resources, then we can have them back.
Okay, and today we really want to focus on us, the people who are down here, who, for example, don't handle this public funds, so to speak, but on our day-to-day lives, we somewhat encourage this corruption. So how do we break that down and probably find solutions to us living rightfully and just an upright life, so to speak? Let me ask you this question, Mr. Emma. Are you corrupt yourself? Have you ever paid a bribe or something?
That is such a dangerous question.
But that's how we have this
started by
conversation.
saying that we are all corrupt, and I think I will agree with her to that extent, because in this country, corruption is in three instances. One is what we all know, which is the grand theft of public resources. Not all of us still, because we don't have access, but there's another one, which you call petty bribes. A traffic officer, traffic cop has stopped you down, and you have to fork like a 10K, so you keep moving. That we are all guilty. And then, of course, there is the issue of patronage. And I think for me, that's where the biggest instance of corruption in this country is. We have created a presidency, given it enormous powers to decide on everything that happens in this country. And that has weakened the institutions that are supposed to be fighting corruption. Because everyone runs to the president to solve every problem, and the president must get the support of everyone to remain in power. So the institutions that we've set up, the laws that we have established are not working, because all the power is vested in the president, who wields enormous authority over all of us in this country. So if we are going to rethink about corruption, then we have to rethink about the power that we have vested in the presidency, because it has weakened the institutions. If I want to do something around corruption, and I run CID, okay, they don't have the mantle and capacity and resources to be able to investigate, to be able to prosecute, and be able to bring most of these cases to a logical conclusion. So at the end of the day, if these institutions are not going to offer me the support that I need, I end up being corrupt for things to move. And that's the situation that we found ourselves in as this country.
And I couldn't agree more with you in that regard, that yes, the institutions have sort of enabled a number of us to actually take part in corruption, on a very sad note, because every time you think you can get out of something, every time you, as you had mentioned, you want to do something faster within a public institute, all you have to do is just give there some money, But also the conversation that I feel that maybe we now need to have is in regards to what the society is perceiving it as. When this report broke, for a number of people who actually decided maybe to tweet about it, to say something about it, it wasn't news for them. It is what is happening in our country. Why are we actually acting surprised? It's no longer of, oh, we're the second. Actually, someone would say we're not the first in East Africa. There could also be that conversation, because as it stands, from the askari that maybe you meet, you give them kintu kidogo, as they call it.
To give you access.
To give you access to something that maybe you shouldn't be getting access to.
Yeah.
To you maybe getting land, it is there. To you even in a restaurant, by the way, if you want some type of treatment, just give a
Talk
tip.
about your home between man and woman.
Exactly. and actually it has trickled down even to relationships. It's all in regards to the money.
Yeah.
It has affected, yes, the donors, it has affected our voice, but what should we be changing in our society now? Yeah.
Very interesting.
I think it's a value system, but you see, the changing society is not detached from the key three things we are discussing. Society is hinged on laws. Society is hinged on systems that support these laws to work. For instance, if you say, I am not going to give any bribe, where will you end? Let me give a typical example. Yesterday, I work with market women, and one of the ladies in Kalero is faced with a situation that her son, tubes, I think, blocked. And I think for the last 3 months, she's been working on it. So finally what happened, from Kawempe, she's referred to Mulako and done all the investigations. And they told her, very true, your son needs surgery very urgently. And they kept tossing her. So yesterday, finally, the doctor told her, you know what, your son needs this very urgently, but you're not going to have it here. I want 1.8, I will take you to a private hospital, and you'll be able to get that. So it comes back to the value system and all the systems. For instance, if Mulago has a clear system to monitor who comes in, what happens to you, what decision is finally taken, and where is the oversight office in that institution to say, this patient has been in our system for over 3 months, who is checking to know what has happened. They came as a patient. You don't go to hospital for anything else, even when some have been turned into like shopping malls. Last year there's a hospital was murdered at Case. I went, I was very sick, I spent the whole day, and actually I was telling them, this is a shopping mall, this is not a hospital, because even despite paying money, there's no any system of accountability. And that's what has broken. Even when you say that when you want to get access to what you don't deserve, no, actually, even what is naturally yours, even what is yours by right that you have paid, you will not get it. So it's a conversation, and bringing broader to the bigger questions. You hear people talking about a national dialogue and all these things. I participated in the study that engaged the youth, and the youth were really frustrated and bitter. They are saying, if the old people as the adults cannot take charge of this country, let them give it back to us. All categories, from schools and everything. And they were asking, what is the system of accountability? Where are we going? We are growing up from here. And the issue was about having a conversation as Ugandans about the value system.
Right.
I went to Rwanda just closing in towards Christmas, and I was engaging about the cleanliness. Of course, everyone, it's amazing, it's a nice place. And I was asking, how did it happen? And they say, we decided and agreed to embrace it as a society. To say, we are going to be very clean, we are going to do this, we are going to do it every day. So even us, if we do that decision, but the decision is not touched from the system of governance, if you do it as an individual and you end up in a private space where corruption is still practiced because of the system, then you come back. So we will not run out from the governance.
Let me ask you this. So what's our solution pretty much? Is it that we're doomed to die with this thing called corruption forever? Where will the change start? Is it bottom up or up bottom? Mr. Emma.
Rita, before we go to exactly that particular aspect, I wanted to add on something. We need to understand the root cause of why we are corrupt in this country. And she talked about the value system. But let me tell you, we have one of the highest income inequality rates probably in Africa, in this country. When you have so many poor people, over 21% of your population are in abject poverty, but you have about 43% who are at the age that should they get a medical bill, should there be crop failure, should there be a loss of a job, should there be a disaster, they fall back into poverty. So basically talking about over 60% of this population poor. And for me, that's the root cause. Unless we are able to ask ourselves on how do we balance economy to ensure that majority of people move the ladder away from poverty into well-being, we are going to struggle with corruption. Because every time I get an opportunity, when I am poor, I look at how do I sustain myself now and in the near future. We've been talking about economic growth in this country for the last so many years, but we've not talked about economic development. Who is benefiting from the economic growth? If we talk about GDP has been growing for this, who is benefiting? It's not the majority of Ugandans. It's only a few individuals in society. So majority of Ugandans are languishing in poverty. You are not going to fight corruption. When you have poor people around you, it's going to be a mess. It's not going to happen.
Are you saying then the immediate solution to that particular issue is having a minimum wage, for example, where such remunerations are actually controlled? You don't end up getting so much more and exploiting, you know, a majority of the population.
I think that can work, but broadly, we need to focus on who is benefiting from this economy. They are not Ugandans. And if they are not Ugandans, it means that we are not solving the core of the problem. I will have values, as Rita is talking about, but I need an economic opportunity for me to be able to live. So with values, without an economic opportunity, I am not going to be able to uphold the values that you think society should be upholding as far as corruption is concerned.
As you talk about the fact that you could have values, but when you go back to the entire system, if I decide that I am not going to actually bribe someone, but then you really want it so bad, yes? And someone will say, but why are you wasting time? All you have to do is give this person, say, 100,000 and everything will be okay. Say Rita, in Rita's case. So in a situation like that, the impact that all of this has on each and every Ugandan is what we need to now focus on. What is happening? Because someone say, yes, corrupt officials, that one, he stole this amount of money. We know him very well, you know. Everyone knows these people, and we say they are untouchable. Some of them are untouchable. But for you who knows that corrupt official, for you who even knows that person at home, or that person even in the hospital, as Rita has mentioned, what impact does it have for each and every other citizen who's going to use those facilities?
I think the impact is outright clear, that first of all, you will not be able to access, and social services comes first. You will not be able to access social services. Today, if you want to know the pain, those who have had candidates and are looking for schools to go to, I'm telling you, Richard,
do you have one? But I have had
if you have not crossed that line, I pray that you find the system much more better. It used to be very clear that if your child has a 4, a 5, a 6, 10, even second grade, you will sit, relax, and wait that you are going to be admitted in the school of your choice. But I tell you today, whether your child, even I don't even know the fuss about the 4s and 5s. We have children who scored 4, 5. I tell them to get the schools of their dream. You need to go there and be able to do something. Corruption is not only about money. But even you making me come to your school at 6 a.m. and I leave another at 10 p.m. and the next day, isn't that corruption? What are you doing to my time? What are you doing to my psychological states? That's a form of corruption. So you're asking, what does it do to us? It indignifies. It takes away the worth that you have. First of all, even a child in the 3rd grade, you deserve to go to school. You do deserve that. So what does it do to us? I've given you the time loss it creates, the financial loss it creates, the inability to be creative that it inhibits. Because sometimes you start thinking, even if I shine, for who will I shine for?
Right.
But also very true, if you shine, sometimes there are people out there who look at you and say, I'm one of those lucky people, for sure, and I credit Ugandans who are still good, that have never paid anything to get a job. And I just go by merit. I knew that from university, that it just has to be me and between me and my skills. So which means there is a ray of hope. Not everyone in Uganda. There are people there who are still focused, who are corrupt-free, and they will look at something. Even if I said schools, yesterday my sister got a school for her daughter, and I told her, you are lucky. That school still has a good value system, and they have integrity, and they value human beings. She went, presented her papers, and she received a message. Please come and pick your admission. And she went, she said she was the headmistress, and she was very, very happy.
Right.
So those Ugandans should come out and tell us and share, so that we do not think that all Uganda is gone. Then secondly, there are very many efforts, civil society, governments. One of the things about corruption is, the encouragement is, do not even close the little window to participate. You see organizations engaging in issues to monitor budgets. Yes, at the local level, sub-county districts, people have been able to bring back certain resources which have been cheated, or to be able to compel a supplier to demolish and construct a toilet afresh. So there is still a window of hope. And the issue is that Ugandans, let us not be too complacent. Bigger, broader issues really look very ugly, but let us take the steps we can be able to use. Participate. Civil society now has budget dialogues, tracking systems, Ministry of Finance. Use it if you can.
But the question is, we've seen quite a number of dialogues, but even the proposals that are put on the table on how to fight corruption, are they ever taken up?
Yes.
So, and that, of course, leads me to my question, where is the solution? Where does the solution lie? Is it the change coming from bottom up or up bottom, Mr. Emma?
Let me just build on something small on what Rita said. There's something that has been going around on social media, and I'm going to read it. That destroying any nation does not require the use of atomic bombs or the use of long-range missiles. It only requires lowering the quality of education and allowing cheating in examinations. Because when that happens, patients die at the hands of doctors, buildings collapse at the hands of engineers, humanity dies at the hands of religious leaders, justice is lost. So she's been talking about education and the challenges that we have in the education system. That is where this whole essence begins from. That if we want to tackle corruption, we are going to go down and start instituting a value system at the lowest level within our children, within our education institutions. So we build citizens that are morally upright, that believe that they should contribute honestly to the construction and building of this nation, that there will be no cheating, and that's what builds this country.
Okay, now before we get into answering the question that Malala has actually posed, let's get what the people on the ground have to say, because we're having a conversation of how it impacts you who's watching, but there are also people out there who we asked the very question. David Rukasi did get these views. Take a watch.
Zinduza batubye datusana bakuba mu mbuga za mateeka wano kuva ku muntu ayola kasasi oluka kwali mu office esemba bifuna tuli bali banguzi
Uganda nga bwe tuli ti batusedde ffe banna twandibadde ku nnamba emu olw'ensonga buli ebikolebwa byonna ngozi nzaako abaana baffe omuntu yenna yandizze ng'agenda tukolera omulimu omulungi nekyandibadde kitongole bwe bagenda ku interview ayandibadde ayiseewo nti yandibadde asooka nga ye talina za nguzi zawaddeyo tayitawo olw'ensonga talina nguzi gyakoze eki gyawadde nga teyandibadde asobola ne bateekawo ono atasobola olw'okuba awaddeyo ki enguzi.
Wowe nyabo nze nfudde batubye Uganda okubanga yakutte kyakubiri ku basajja abalwana bali b'enguzi kyekikubisa emiranga
kiyinza okuba kituufu simanyi bani abakoze okunoonyereza naye ndabiwuliddeko ku mawulire naye nga muli kyendowooza bwekitunuulira nze ndowooza tebandigiyise nanguzi endaba bubeera bubbi lwaki bwe bakukola oluguudo nga bagekola kilomitazi oba 6 kola kilomita 45 bagambye okukola obugazi mita bweziti notazikola nze ndowooza obubeera bubbi.
Now, as I try to say corruption, there's a man out there who's saying, woo-wee, batubye. Honestly, and it goes back to what Mr. Chitamike did say. We should stop calling corruption, and just simply say theft. Because as you can hear, batubye is what the man is saying. And now let's have a conversation about what the thoughts of the people are.
The thoughts, that cry is loud and clear. That it comes back to the 3 key things that even the report itself highlights. The rule of law, the courts, the parliament, and the executive. That's corruption in Uganda. I told you, the law itself bars from people or does not ask or demand or obligate that if you're prosecuted, you're guilty, please pay back. And as long as we are not having that, then what are you prostituting for? You take it to Ruzira, you serve your years, and then you'll come out, or your children will be benefiting from that particular wealth. I pass at Kazinda's house every other time. And it pains me as a Ugandan to know that he's in Ruzira, but
Your money is there.
my money is right here.
Yes.
And then the independency of the institutions, so that the president of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, can let institutions work, because it is, well, yes, you want to imagine that parliament is there, we do elect members of parliament and they go and sit, the judges are there. It doesn't work that way. When you have the issue about power, that's when you see, if you have power, even if you're LC1, you can use it for anything to abuse people. So if the president continues not to allow justice to take place, we will not be able to overhaul like she wants us to do. Because you don't wake up and turn down society like this. The law is very important. And I will end by saying the consensus of the people, and then it starts. If Parliament themselves sit and say this Sanja will be able to increase this amount of money, if they continue to receive bribes to be able to rape the Constitution, if they receive bribes to be able to change anything and let this country not be based on law, the efforts that we put across will not change much. And that's why that man is crying. They are even appalled that we are the second. So who is listening to that cry? And I think the president should listen and know, even when he goes to a rally and you find thousands of people will come, they are not coming because they are happy. They are actually coming to be able to hear if there's anything that is going to change their life. But when you're a politician and you see masses of people in front of you, the only thing you think about is they support me. You don't want to read deep in their eyes, to see the sweat, to see the anguish in their eyes, to solve their problem. You take it for granted that they support you.
Mr. Emma?
If there is one person in this country who understands corruption and its magnitude or toll on citizens, then it is the president of this country. Because of his position and being privy to all sorts of information that comes his way. And we should take this conversation away from the president, because the current system pretty benefits the ruling class or the ruling party in that case. I think Ugandans now understand the magnitude of the problem. Everyone, if you go out, I mean, this particular corruption index, these are public perceptions of how we are corrupt as a country. And I think the conversation needs to get back to us as citizens and say, is this how we want to run this country? Is this how we want to be governed? And now you want to look at processes like the national dialogue that is coming up, being a platform where Ugandans have an opportunity to speak about what's happening in this country in relation to corruption and decide. If Ugandans decide that the status quo should continue, that you should bribe your way to whatever you want to do, they will have decided. If they decide otherwise, then let them decide on what needs to be done. I think of every one of us, I am very sure we know what needs to be done. We need the rule of law, we need constitutionalism, we need institutions that function, we need freedom of association, we need the freedom of the press as a watchdog of society. We know what needs to be done. Okay, the question is, how do we get it to be done?
Okay. So, Rita, I think that's a heavy conversation that we've just had, and yes, keep your views coming. The hashtag is Morning at NTV. As much as we're saying that, you know what, it's the institutions that need to support us to live, you know, a clean life, so to speak. What are your opinions? What are the solutions that we can have with regards to corruption? Keep your views coming. Rita.
Thank you so much, Miss Rita Tukwasa, for coming through. Mr. Emma Chitameke for coming through as well. As the conversation continues, from what we have learned, it does impact in regards to your worth, how you are affected at the end of the day. Also in terms of your financial bit of it. It's not just the money you give, it's your time as well, as you go ahead to try and make sure that you give your money and make sure that this is given to you. So corruption continues to become the conversation in 2019, and with the words that the man said, woo-wee, woo-wee, woo-wee. Keep it morning at NTV, because we continue.
You're watching Morning at NTV.
Coming up on the first episode of Coke Studio Africa 2019, love is in the air as this week's headliners celebrate Valentine's Day. East African music royalty Nandi hooks up with West African superstar Scales to create major musical moments. Plus, Mr. Easy sprinkles some of his Banku music into a special